Hey guys, BreakWizard59 here, and welcome back to a look at my custom LEGO James Bond minifigure showcase. So in here in front of you, I have all of my custom minifigures from James Bond movie series. Of course, in the front row we have all our 6 James Bond actors, as well as M and Q. And then the next 2 rows are just full of some of the James Bond villains. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started and take a look at these minifigures. Alright, so let's go ahead and start off with our first 3 James Bond minifigures. Going from left to right, we have Sean Connery's James Bond. He, of course, has a nice greased back Draco Malfoy hairpiece. And in terms of the head, I actually based it off the From Russia with Love movie poster. And again, images of the actors will be next to each of the minifigures, so you can kind of get a bit of a reference of how they look in real life compared to their Lego minifigure. But he has a bit of a smirk face that is actually the Clone Trooper headpiece. And I think that really suits him well, once again, similar to his movie poster in From Russia with Love. And then in terms of the tuxedo, that is actually custom printed. I found that at Brooks by the Bay 2016. And I'm actually really happy with that torso. Moving along, we have George Lazenby's James Bond. Now, he has a pretty generic headpiece, and in terms of the hairpiece, and then the head is actually the cook from Jack Sparrow, except I did color or paint his eyebrows black, and I think that looks decent. I would definitely like to find a better headpiece, as it's not perfectly matching, but for the time being, I think it's pretty decent. And then he just has a regular minifigure suit. Lastly, we have Roger Moore. Now, Roger Moore, I really like that hairpiece. That's actually Emmett's hairpiece, and I think that suits him perfectly, especially looking at the image. He also has the cook from Jack Sparrow's headpiece, and that originally had the brown eyebrows, and of course he has some of the wrinkles, because Roger Moore started James Bond when he was like 46, so he'd already started to age a bit, and I think that headpiece does suit him decently well. And then, of course, he also has a custom printed tuxedo. And the next 3 minifigures from left to right, we have Timothy Dalton. Now, Timothy Dalton, again, I'll put the image on the screen, but he actually has the Anakin Skywalker type of hairpiece, and I think that suits him really, really well. It kind of captures that his hair quite good, or quite well. And then in terms of the headpiece, he does have the Anakin Skywalker Episode 2 headpiece, except I did paint his eyebrows black, and I think that looks pretty good. And then he also comes with the custom tuxedo. Next off, we have Pierce Brosnan's James Bond, and he comes with the Superman headpiece, and again, compared to the reference image, I think it's a perfect headpiece for Pierce Brosnan, or hairpiece. His head, on the other hand, I think is decent. I really couldn't find a head that actually really matched the looks of Pierce Brosnan, but I think for what I have, it looks pretty good. And then he does have a suit, as I know that Pierce Brosnan wore a suit, a tuxedo in Tomorrow Never Dies, but he really mostly, when you see him, he really wears a suit. He hasn't really wore a tuxedo too much, so I gave him this suit. And then lastly, we have Daniel Craig's James Bond, who's probably my favorite of the 6. Just in terms of accuracy. So he, of course, has the Agent Callus hairpiece and headpiece, actually, except I did remove the beard printing. And then he has a tuxedo, which is, again, custom printed, and this is actually supposed to represent the one he wears in the movie Spectre. And actually, that's where I got the whole reference of him from, the Spectre movie poster. And I think it's pretty much a picture-perfect representation of how he looks on that movie poster. But anyways, these are our 3 James Bonds, and now let's go ahead and get on to M and Q. Alright, so here we have M and Q. Now, M actually isn't the original. This is actually the newer one played by Judi Dench. And she actually looks really good. So she has a pretty generic, like kind of messy hairpiece. This is actually seen quite a bit. I know for sure the Agent Chase has that hairpiece. There are quite a few minifigures who have that hairpiece, and that is in the light bluish gray. Her headpiece is Professor McGonagall's, and I think that is a really, really good headpiece. In terms of the torso, that is the one of Lois Lane from Superman, and then she has some regular dark bluish or light bluish gray legs. In terms of Q, he has a nice, just generic hairpiece, which is found in quite a few sets. In terms of his head, that is actually of Professor Dumbledore, and I think that really looks good on him. And then he, of course, has just a regular suit. So those are M and Q. Alright, so let's go ahead and now take a look at our first 4 villains. Now I'm doing this in chronological order by movie. So on the very left, we have Dr. No. He has, once again, the Draco Malfoy hairpiece, except I did shave off that widow's peak. And I think that looks really good. The head is actually of Lex Luthor, which portrays him pretty decent. The torso I'm really happy with, once again, as you see with the images on the screen. But the torso is actually the Cloud City Luke Skywalker torso, except I did sand off the pockets. And I think that's a perfect for his suit that he wears in the movie. Next off, we have Rosa Klebb. Now she is from Russia with Love, and she is the main antagonist. And I think she looks pretty good. She is a Russian general, so I did give her the Russian general uniform. Her headpiece is Irina Spalko from Indiana Jones, and I think that's a perfect headpiece for her. And then she does have the Obi-Wan Kenobi hair. Next off, we have Goldfinger. He actually is one of my more favorite villains. I think, for example, starting off, let's take a look at the hair. That is, again, your pretty generic Luke Skywalker hairpiece. His head, though, which is quite interesting, is from Thor. So this is actually Thor's headpiece, except I did erase off his beard. And I think that really captures his facial expressions really well. And then finally, we have Oddjob. He's actually the most simple in that he really doesn't have any custom parts to him. Sadly, I was unable to find his hat. So I was unable to include that, but his headpiece is from the Shanghai Gangster, and he has a nice suit. Alright, moving along to our next 3 minifigures. From left to right, we have Emilio Largo from Thunderball, and I think he looks really, really good. So he, of course, has a, once again, generic light bluish gray hairpiece, and in terms of his head, it is actually the one from the First Order officer, except I did end up drawing in or painting in an eye patch and give him a bit of like wrinkles around his mouth, and I think that really captures him well. And then he also has a white suit, which is one of the primarily things he wears in Thunderball. Next off, we have Blofeld, who's probably the most famous of all the James Bond villains, and he made his first appearance, of course, in You Only Live Twice. So in terms of his headpiece, he does actually have Lucius Malfoy's headpiece, and he does have painted on a red scar, and I think that really looks good. In terms of his torso, there's nothing on his torso. I know he does have a bit of a suit similar to that of Dr. No, but sadly I was not able to include that as I didn't have another one of those torsos. And then of course he does have his famous white cat. And lastly, we have Kanaga. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, but he is from Live and Let Die, and he is again the main villain from Live and Let Die, and he has a pretty generic hairpiece, and then he does have the First Order crew member head, and then he also has just a regular suit. Moving along now from left to right, we have Mr. Scaramanga, and he is from The Man with the Golden Gun. And I actually really like this minifigure, and I'll tell you why. Because, if you did not know, Scaramanga is played by Christopher Lee, who is actually also the actor for Count Dooku. So, LEGO had already made a Count Dooku minifigure, and as I show you here, so I basically just used his headpiece, except I erased off the beard. So basically what you see here is him without a beard, but this is the Count Dooku headpiece without a beard, and I think that looks really, really good. And that was actually kind of cool that Lego already had made a head of that actor. And then in terms of his hair, he also has that sleek Draco Malfoy type of hair in dark bluish gray. And then he also has a nice suit. Next off, we have Jaws, who was probably the most famous villain. He made his appearances in The Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker. And he has just your regular kind of like messy black hair. In terms of his head, which is quite interesting, he does have like the Superman head, except I did end up painting his teeth in the silver color to represent like his metal teeth. And he has a plain white torso and then black or brown legs with a printed on belt and pants. And lastly, we have Alec Trevelyan from Goldeneye. Now, this minifigure is a bit more generic. He has just your regular hairpiece. His head is actually from Han Solo, and I think that kind of captures his facial expression well. He has a black torso with like a printed on jumpsuit and black legs. And the last three minifigures here, we have Electra on the very left. She is from The World Is Not Enough, and I believe she's the only main female antagonist. And so I thought I really did need to make her. And she has a Lego Friends hairpiece, which I think suits her pretty well. In terms of her head, I believe that is Princess Leia's. And then she has the Bellatrix torso, which kind of is pretty accurate to like that one dress she wears at the kind of the nearing the end of the movie. And again, have the image on the screen. Next off, we have Le Chiffre from Casino Royale. Now, he also has your Draco Malfoy headpiece. I'm using that quite a lot in these minifigures. But in terms of his head, that is actually Boba Fett's head, except I did use sandpaper and just sand off the beard to remove the printing of the beard. And I left his scars. And actually, that's kind of perfect because he has that one scar on the top of his left eye, which is accurate to what he had in the movie, and I think that looks perfect. And then he just has the Lex Luthor's suit. And lastly, this one I'm not as happy about. I want to fix the hair, but this is Silva from Skyfall. And he has just your regular blonde hairpiece. His head is actually from Luke Skywalker, which I think portrays him decently, but I would like to fix the hair for that, maybe get a bit more accurate one. And then he has the First Order crew member torso and legs, kind of to represent his black outfit at the end of the movie. So there you go. Those are a look at my James Bond minifigures. And that's going to do it for a look at my LEGO Custom James Bond minifigure showcase. So I want to thank everyone for watching. Definitely give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And don't forget to subscribe down below. And check out some of my other custom reviews, like my custom James Bond Aston Martin DB5, as well as some of my other themed mocks on my channel. But anyways, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more videos coming soon. This is BrickWizard59, and I'll see you all next time.